Hello, welcome to Uncommon Leadership. Whether you want more innovation more easily, you're feeling burnt out or overwhelmed, or you simply know that something isn't quite the way you know it can be, you are not alone. I hear the same from leaders every day. On Uncommon Leadership, we explore aligning personal fulfillment with business success, creating authentic teams, and cultivating the resilience necessary to move beyond simply surviving today's challenges into thriving. I'm Michael Hunter, and today we'll uncover fresh insights into what it means to lead with resilience, adaptability, and ease. Joining me today is Dr. Maria H. Andersen. The H to separate her from all the other Marie Andersons, which I understand because there are a million Michael Hunters even in my city. Maria is the co-founder and CEO of Socrate, her second EdTech startup, which launched just last month, which November 2025, because there's a slight delay here. With a 30-year career dedicated to improving teaching and learning, Maria has always kept one foot in the classroom. She's taught across community colleges, private colleges, universities, and K-12 schools, covering a wide range of subjects, including math, business, chemistry, ELL, or English language learning, and her personal favorite, a middle school elective she designed called Technology and Society. Welcome, Maria.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Excited to have you here. When did you first recognize that integrating your whole self and bringing that into everything you do might be a valuable approach?
Well, I spent my first 15 years as an adult, maybe longer than that, maybe more like 20 years as an adult inside of academia in some way or another, as a student, as a grad student, as a professor. And so I don't know that I realized anything was missing until I left it. And when I left it to work in ed tech in 2012, something started to feel off in my balance. The one lovely thing about academia is there's always lots to do. There are multiple classes to teach. There are committees to be involved in. There are extra jobs on the side that you can do. And so I had always found a way to fulfill my brain's needs with the things that surrounded me. And when I moved into ed tech, I started to feel hints that things might be missing. And one of the things that I realized about probably 5 years into that was that I really needed like a teaching and learning outlet. I have been involved with classes pretty much since I was 18 years old in college. Even then I graded papers for a professor. I taught review sessions for math subjects. The next year I was a TA for chemistry. Like I've been teaching since I was 18 years old. And to not be teaching was just very strange. And I realized that there's something about teaching that if the first thing is that you can actually leave your entire life behind when you're in front of a classroom. It is so all consuming to manage a class of students, teach the content, figure out the right pedagogy to go along with all of that and the behavior management. You pretty much have to leave everything else in your life behind. So in some ways, it's like therapy from your regular life because whatever was worrying you, you actually cannot worry about it. At least I can't while in front of a classroom. It's like fully occupying of my entire self. And so not having that kind of release from regular life meant that you were thinking and worrying about all your normal things all the time without any break from it. And the other thing I realized was that teaching gives you a very real kind of petri dish to try creative things. Like you can think of them on a Monday and try them on a Tuesday and see how they work with real students, in a real situation. And very little in the corporate world gives you that kind of creative outlet to just like have an idea and try it the next day. Depending on the size of the organization, sometimes you have an idea, you have to run it through 12 people, it has to run its way back down to you. By the time it gets back down to you, you have 12 better ideas and none of those have been approved, right? So or I found as I moved into EdTech that I really had a need to fill. I'm guessing that a lot of people fill that outlet because they have their own children and I don't. And so this is kind of like it's my connection to youth. It's my connection to just having a break from my regular life and just that real world creative outlet, I guess. So that's probably when I first started to feel that something was off. I really felt it. Um, I think I really felt it the most when I did a stint as the director of learning design for Western Governors University. And for a while there, I had a really great team and we did a ton of really creative work together. And then that team started to peel off to other leaders, and my team kept shrinking and shrinking and shrinking. And as that happened, like my outlet to do creative things kind of started to disappear. And I probably would have just gone and taught a class and like fulfilled it that way, except they had a really strict no outside work policy, like none. You couldn't drive an Uber, you couldn't teach a class, you couldn't be a karate instructor, like you couldn't do any outside work. And that was, uh, the thing that I would have gone to get that fulfilled. It wasn't available to me, and in the end, I ended up leaving, and that was probably at least a good part of it.
How much of what was missing in those situations was the explicit act of teaching
That's a
kids,
good
working
question.
with kids?
I do think that for me, that is like if I had to pick my ideal work life balance, that there would always be that there. Whether one year the first year after I left course tune, I really was exhausted and I just wanted to have something of a break year. So my break year is probably different than other people's version of a break year. So I went to try my hand at teaching in K-12 and I taught a high school class on entrepreneurship and I taught this middle school class on technology and society, which had no curriculum whatsoever and I had to completely build from scratch. And then I taught English language to immigrants who are new to the United States, who have literacy in another language, but not English. And so that was kind of like teaching three things I had never taught before to three different levels of students. And that was my break year from, from everything else, which is probably not, like I said, anybody else's version of a break year, but it was my version of a break year. And I mean, your question is how much of it is teaching? I think that that's my ideal, right? Like if I could do anything, teaching is just this lovely balance of creativity and fun and teaching kids you laugh every day. The things they say, especially middle schoolers, they also are incredibly frustrating, but you do laugh every day. And I can remember weeks in the corporate world where I didn't laugh once on the job, the entire week. And I think that that's again, it might be something you normally get from having your own children, but I need that personally. I think you have to at some point recognize the things that you need personally, right?
Absolutely. This is one of the things I help people recognize and give to themselves is what I call your replenishing resources. That we each
Yeah,
have a set of things that we need to get. And if any of those we're not getting enough or refilling enough on whatever durations they need to come in at, then we can be super unhappy. A lot of the burnout and overwhelm for the people that I've worked with and encountered, if not the primary root cause, is often their one or more of their replenishing resources is too low, has been too low for too
yeah,
long. And it's like your garage door opener when one of those batteries is flat and the other one's super good. Like sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, and you can't ever tell what's going to
yeah,
happen. And people
yeah.
are the
I,
same
I did
way.
feel like I did feel like in the corporate world, at my like in early days, like of course tune, we were still building so much from scratch, and it was very creative, and you could see kind of like what was happening every day, um, and that was great. But as products mature, like my vision of a roadmap, goes like 4 years out. You're building tiny little iterations over, 2 to 4 weeks or 6 weeks each time, right? And so that fulfillment of that like immediate satisfaction of like, ooh, let's try this, and then seeing a result, it's like it got to the point where, like, when you finally got to see the finished result, you were already on to the next iteration of what needed to be built. It was almost always like a dissatisfaction because the day you released something, you'd start hearing about all the other features people wanted to have that you knew were in development but didn't get out then, like, it just wasn't quite the same anymore, and, teaching did help temper that a bit because there was always something a creative outlet, for that. In fact, when I, wrote the offer letter to myself for this new company, I made sure to put in that letter that, I would always be allowed to teach at least one prep, um, and, that, that's important to me, and I don't want it taken away from me.
I love the idea of writing yourself an offer letter for the company that you are founding. Where did that idea come
You
from?
kinda have to because you have to have, like, your stock vesting policies and, what are your my co-founder and I, we co-wrote our offer letters, and I signed his and he signed mine, right? So, um, but you kinda it's good to set forth the things up front that are important to you so that those are not removed, and I think that's actually I know one of the questions later on is about, uh, creating, cultures that are make people feel safe and empowered. And I think that actually allowing people and encouraging people to have their own side project is actually fairly good. I think that a lot of creativity and innovation comes from the collision of random things in your life. And so if you can find something that really you feel passionate about that might take a few hours away from hours you could spend on work, you know, but still it helps your brain to flourish and think around new ideas, that is actually more valuable to the company. Those random collisions of a whole different realm of subject area colliding with what you're doing, I think can be much more valuable than just more time spent doing the same thing.
Absolutely. And many companies want to do this. Not quite as many companies actually try to do this. What I find is a lot of the employees, the people that have to actually go do it, find it really hard to take that time away from their, call it main job or the work that they're doing to finish the sprint, this release, to take that time every week, every sprint to go off and work on something else. You clearly don't have that problem. You have ideas and engagement around this overflowing and more than you could possibly do. What helps you keep excited about that and actually take the time to go do these other things that aren't that central thing?
Well, I think one of the beauties of being a teacher is that you don't actually have the luxury of not going to do it. Like, if you have agreed to show up at a time and a place to teach a class, you will do that, right? There's no real ability to just say like, "I don't feel like teaching today. I'm just gonna stay home," right? Like, you've made a commitment to the kids you teach or the adults you teach and the time so I think that one thing you can do is to have um high stakes appointment to do that stuff, right? And clearly being a teacher, an instructor, a volunteer or something gives you that like, oh, I did say I was going to do this, so I better go, right? So making a commitment, like an actual commitment to doing it can help. That can be on the instruction side. It can be like I actually paid and signed up for a class to do this, so I'm going to go do it, right? I'm sure that's why so many exercise clubs have a fee that you pay if you don't show up, right? To help you to overcome that last minute, like, oh, I'll just stay in this meeting. Like, I don't want to pay the $20. I think I'll go to class, right? Um, Another thing that you can do to make sure that you actually commit to the path you want to be on, like maybe it's like learning a new subject or something like that. I find it really helpful to sign up to give a workshop or a talk on a new subject, like say 6 to 12 months from now, so that there is no way I can back out of learning it. That like I have a high stakes public failure ahead of me if I don't learn the topic that I am going to be talking about. And I know from experience that a 6 month period or a 12-month period is enough time for me to really kind of wrap my head around a difficult topic. But there are lots of ways you can kind of hold yourself accountable to something to make sure that you do actually set aside the time. It can help to just, have it on your calendar ahead of time so that there's not any ability to schedule over it. At some point, my co-founders and I had to make a deal essentially like whenever they had kids to pick up, we would drop the call. Like if somebody said I need to go pick up a kid from school, that was the end of a call. But I had this thing I do every morning. I walk my dogs at 7 every morning, and every morning of the week I walk my dogs with a different person. These are all people who do not live near me. I have them on a headset, and so I have a Monday person, and every other Tuesday I have different people who share Tuesday, and Wednesday is the same person, Thursday it's the same person, Friday it's every other week. And so that's time that I dedicate to talking to a friend, right? A consistent conversation where we can catch up and see how each other's lives are doing. And again, it's a kind of a way to have a random set of ideas come at you from somebody who's immersed in a different reality than yours. One of my friends is an acupuncture doctor. Another one runs her own consulting business around developmental math reform. One is an author in the instructional design field. One's a futurist, right? And so to me, those 7 a.m. calls are really important, both because I get to connect with a friend and I get to kind of put my brain at problems that aren't my problems and to hear about ideas for things that are my problems, right? And so those calls were important to me. We always had morning meetings that would run into those calls, and at some point I just had to say, look, to me this is like picking up a kid. We have to stop running through my things. If you're picking up a kid, we drop the call immediately. I just need to say, I'm picking up a kid, and you guys know what that means. We drop the call
They don't.
immediately, and I get to go to my phone calls, right? Because there are some things where on a job, if you say a phrase like, I need to pick up a kid right now, everything stops, right? And I don't think that we give people who are childless the same grace that we give people who have children sometimes. And so that became our phrase for no, you need to respect Maria's time too. Like this is her special thing she does, and we need to respect that. That way I get my exercise, I get my phone calls with friends. Like, these are things that are important to keeping my brain functioning optimally.
Thank you for all those examples. I s- can I see lots of ways to apply that into a business context. I'm curious, when you were at CourseTune and the other business environments, and I guess in your academic environments too, how did you help your people consistently take this time to do things not related to their primary task so that they had this creative time to pursue and bring in the innovations that could make an enormous difference in the company or the environment?
I think one thing you have to do as a leader is to know what hobbies and things that your employees like to do and encourage it, right? Don't discourage it, right? I think a lot of these things end up getting shut down kind of by accident because of a lack of understanding that that's what's happening, right? So I could probably list every single one of my employees at CourseTune and tell you what they liked to do in their free time and what times of day they did those things. And, you know, I had one employee who we agreed up front would only work a 32-hour week and that was enough at our company to get health care and benefits. Um, but that was the best thing for that employee to manage their work-life balance and what they had going on, and they definitely put in a regular week of thinking and innovating, and I mean, different people have a different capacity for doing work, right? And like just like there are 10x engineers, there are 10x of every other type of employee too, right? And so to imagine that a specific number of hours is like the ideal number of hours also seems a little strange to me. Um, the work is the work. And I've always judged employees a lot more for what they are capable of getting done than the number of hours they put in.
So often can, there's always more work to do than we have time. And it's so easy to focus on getting more of the work done because it's always all super important. How do you keep those boundaries for yourself that, yes, I could work another 40 hours today and it's really, I need to go do these phone calls or make dinner, or it's been enough hours today that I'm done. And then how do you help your employees do that?
I think the longer you work, the greater recognition you have that you will never get everything done. I mean, I think that my current to-do list has something around 400 items on it. And there is a point where you're seasoned enough to know that it doesn't really matter if you stop and come back to it tomorrow. Like things are getting done, and that's all you can do. The hardest part is actually focusing on the big deliverables when there are so many little things to do as well. I think I think though that teachers are particularly good at this because the big deliverable is showing up in a classroom and teaching something to students in the most creative way you can think of. And the details are the getting back, answering emails, grading papers, administrative duty. Like those are all the details, right? And teachers do manage to show up every day and get the big thing done. And so to some extent, I think teachers are actually masters of this. Um, it's a hard thing for me to stay focused on the big things. So some days I write a list of like 3 big things I want to focus on during the day so that hopefully by the end of the day I've got those things, like I've moved those things forward amidst all the tiny details of minutia of running a company. Um, there are some great apps that kind of try to help you pick, your top 3 for the day. What are the 3 things you most want to get done today? I've been trying to use an app called, let's see what it's called. I think it's just called Journal. That's what it says on the app, anyways. And it will say like, what are your top 3 things you want to like focus on today? So if you manage to, use an app regularly, something like that might help. And then the other question was, how do I help employees to do this? I have to say that I kind of live and die by to-do lists. And so I try to help every employee kind of has a different strategy for how they get things done. The ones I have the most difficult time with are the ones who write nothing down and then drop the ball all the time. And so I've had several employees I've mentored over the years I think I had one instructional designer who worked under me, and he just relied on his memory 100% and never wrote things down. And at some point, I was just like, leave this meeting, go get yourself a piece of paper. Don't come back till you have a paper and a pencil. I'm done with this. Right. And after that, he started carrying a notebook and he started writing things down. And I saw him several years after I'd left WGU at a conference. And he was like, wait, I just got to show you something. He went to his backpack, he pulled out a notepad, and he's like, look, I still do it. Still write things down. It was a really good piece of advice, right? Um, I think that when you're young, you think that your memory is fantastic. And I think that in general that is true when you're young, but that's young without phones distracting you constantly, right? And I think in this last decade, the phone is so much of a distraction from the things that you're supposed to be remembering to do. It's putting so much information into your head that you don't even realize how much you're dropping out of uh you've committed to something, you've said you're going to do something, and it just disappears within a half an hour, right? And so I do think it's actually more important than ever before to just write down things in some way, um, so that they don't get dropped. They don't necessarily have to be done immediately, but they do probably, if somebody asked you to do something and you said you were going to do it, for heaven's sakes, write it down. At least so that you keep becoming aware that there's this thing that you did say you were going to do. It's really just bad form to commit to things and not even make progress on them. So I guess trying to help employees with a strategy that works for them. Everybody's kind of got a different system, a different way. And, some people like to use Evernote, some people like to use Notion. And, I just use like a simple to do app for mine. But, just finding some system that works to help people to stay on track. There's also something magical about writing things down, I think, that you can, if they're written down, you won't forget to do them. And so you can go about the rest of your life. Like you can go about having dinner with your family and doing an activity in the evening. And if you think of something you need to do, all you need to do is go to whatever app you're using and write it down, right? And then it's out of your head again. Helps you to sleep at night, things like that. So I guess that's just helping people if they need a strategy, if they're not there yet, helping them to find something that lets them set aside that stuff and enjoy their life. I also always encourage employees to take vacations. Um, I always want to know when your next vacation is. Do you have it planned? Is it on the calendar? Because I think relaxation is really important. Having new experiences is really important.
Yes. Which is a great segue into my next question, that this is all, how do we help ourselves? How do we help our people recognize the value coming out of taking that time away on vacation, and also taking the time away from the primary things into the more exploratory, experimental, don't know what's going to come out of this time on a regular basis? How do you show the business value, the people up the management chain from you, your peers, when you're at the top like you often are as a founder? How do you show the business value to them taking this time away from the thing that customers are demanding yesterday?
I mean, the best way I can do it is to model it and to be transparent in how other things have helped the company, right? Um, my husband is always amazed at how some random thing I did that he's like, I don't even know why you're doing this, will end up being the thing that helps a particular idea or feature or design that we have. I can't think of an example at the moment, but he's always just like, I can't believe that that random thing actually helped. Like, um, and so I do like to, like, when I get an idea from outside of the realm I'm in, I try to make sure that it's clear that that's where it came from. So like some of the design of Course Tune came from um, biology, actually. Things that I had seen in biology diagrams, in biology, like in electrophoresis gel, in like just a way a different field has taken information and modeled it or experimented with it, helped me to figure out how to build a very complicated instructional design system. Um, so in a way that you could visualize what was going on. And if I didn't have a biology degree, I would not have been exposed to those things, right? And sometimes that there would be an insight, from a conversation with the student that would help me figure out how to frame a particular problem we were dealing with, or an idea for how to present something in a new way. And so just modeling that, being transparent that like this ideas don't happen in a vacuum. I'd say one thing an organization could do to help this would be to have a group read of that. I think it's Stephen Johnson's book, Where Do Ideas Come From? Something like that. Um, and one of the things he shows you in that book is that ideas are not just sparks that you have. An idea usually comes from the collision of something new you were just exposed to with your unique life experience and problems you've been trying to solve, right? And that the reason we sometimes see the what's called the adjacent possible, it is just the development of this same idea in two places at two times by two people. For example, calculus was discovered by two people at the same time, is because you're at this like technological or knowledge frontier, and two people encounter something new on that frontier with the same similar backgrounds, maybe slightly different subjects, and that collision of things is what actually sparks an idea. um, and so, like, learning to understand how ideas actually are formed. You need this, like, idea bath. You need to be constantly exposed to new things. If you're not constantly exposed to new things, you don't even know which new things are gonna be the things that actually collide with the problems you're trying to solve correctly, right? But you do need to be exposed to new ideas. And so what better way to have that happen than to have, hobbies and projects and work outside of what you normally do that just keeps you constantly exposed to new thoughts and new ideas. Whether that's volunteering in a kid's classroom, or you know uh, some kind of instrument you play on the side, or a side project where you're volunteering for an organization. Like, these are all things that are really valuable for creating that synergy of ideas. um, we had a phrase where I went to a TEDx event in Qatar, many years ago, and we called it, that book had just come out recently, and we called it idea sex. Like, when you get a collection of people together who all have different backgrounds and are, can talk for several hours. It's just this, like, all of these ideas floating around the room, having sex with each other and creating offspring, right? And that just doesn't happen if all of your employees spend all of their time working for your company and doing nothing else. That doesn't happen. So, maybe the solution is a group read of this book, or something like that, so that everybody really gets that this is valuable and important to the company.
What I'm really hearing you say is the value we're here in the business to create is not getting the thing done that the customer is asking for, or that some boss has decided needs to happen, or that was what we planned for the sprint. The value we're really here to do is delight our customers, create outrageous, unexpected delight for our customers, and that can't, it's really hard to plan that, because we can know where we are and there's an evolution and we can make things better and better and better. And yeah, we can project that some of this is going to really delight our customers, but the really unexpected things, the products that have really changed the tech world, or the ideas that have changed the world, all came out of unexpected directions. It wasn't anyone sitting down and saying, okay, I'm going to create a Walkman. Like, I'm going to create this thing that everyone's going to have on their ears, or I'm going to create the iPhone, or Air Jordans, or Levi's 501s. People didn't sit down to create these. They all came out of someone fulfilling some need for something, that, and a whole bunch of ideas having sex with each other, as you said. I love that.
Yeah.
metaphor.
Yeah. I mean, I do think it is still important that you balance, like, you do have to deliver features that customers want, and you should not, like, lose sight of that, but it can't be so single-minded that there's not space to think about, like, it's very important that employees and leaders have other things in their life to have those sparks, to have those insights and innovative moments. And so you should really not shut them down. You should encourage them. And the work that gets done is the work that gets done. And you hope to hire people who are productive enough that their work week gets the main things done, but giving them the space to do the side the side projects and the volunteering and the hobbies is probably just as valuable to your employees' ability to innovate in their spaces, more valuable to your company than having them work 80 hours.
Great. We need to nurture and encourage the full spectrum from complete play to total dredge. We know exactly what to do. It's just straight execution. There's no perhaps obvious creativity involved and everything in between. And letting people explore to understand where on that spectrum is best for them to be at any one point in time.
Yeah. That work is hard because there's always things involved in work that is actual work, right? There's nothing fun about having to go, and I'm hiring, we have employees already in 3 states. So I've got to go to 3 states and set up that we're a foreign entity in that state, do a business license for that state, get the workers' compensation accounts, get the tax accounts, connect that all to payroll. Like, nothing about that that's particularly fun or innovative, but it is required. It is part of work, right? I think you have to balance a job so that you're not doing 100% stuff like that, so that there is the ability to manage and control some of your own projects and um, paths, right? But that's not to say we're going to make the other stuff completely go away. That's part of the job too, right? And I have to do those things just the same as everybody else has to do those things. I think one of the places we're going wrong in the US is by creating jobs that are nothing but that are nothing but a slog. I think all of this movement to, like, create very, very, very specific jobs where somebody just does one thing as their job is really harming us. I don't know how easy it is to be a happy employee and to look forward to your work when your work is very, very, very narrow in scope. I think we would be better off widening the scope of jobs a bit and having, if you had 10 people who each did a very specific job, why not have 10 people who each can do 3 jobs instead? That gives you a team that's more capable of covering each other's workload. It gives people variety. They might hate one aspect of the job, but like 2 of the others, right? Like, I think our drive to specialize has actually hurt um, our ability to thrive as humans. So I know that for me, the more specialized jobs have become for me, the worse I like them. And, that might just be me. There may be people who really love doing it only one thing as their job, but I doubt it. I think having a little bit of despecialization would make a lot of jobs better.
Is that one of the things you love so much about teaching, that it forces you to be a generalist and to have that full spectrum of the dredge of grading the math problems where there's a yes or no answer all the way through the creativity of coming up with lesson plans and figuring out how to teach gerunds to this particular set of kids who are not the way to do it for the set of kids you had last semester.
Yeah, I do think that there's a lot of that in teaching. Um, I may crave it more than other people. I am probably more of a neo generalist by, just by design. And so, like, I don't even like teaching just one subject. I did leave academia in 2012 because I just couldn't teach math anymore. It was the primary thing I taught. And I'd spent 10 years becoming as creative and as good of a teacher. But I just wasn't getting the same bang for my buck anymore teaching math. And so after I left, I ended up teaching, like social media and business ethics and entrepreneurship and business management. And I did go back and teach a little bit of math, but only under uh, the promise that I could teach it however I wanted, as long as I was teaching the main parts of the subject area, which I got to do at a private liberal arts college. And and even like right now, I'm teaching full time in K-12, and I'm teaching AP Calculus, entrepreneurship, ACT Math, and technology and society. So like very different classes. Um, so I think I particularly have a need to do a wide variety. Like it keeps my brain engaged fully to teach a wide variety of things, to do a wide variety of things. Now, I will say that teaching full time while starting a new company is not ideal. So I will drop down to half time in about 2 weeks. In the meantime, it's a little bit nuts.
Because teaching only half time won't still be a little nuts.
It'll be less nuts.
Which
I have taught
for you,
I have taught calculus like 30. This is my 32nd time teaching calculus. So it's
oh,
not really something I have to do much prep for. I can show up and teach calculus. I have binders full of activities and notes, and I can teach it without prepping it. So for me, that one's not much of a burden. And I didn't feel like if one is taking a 1 year long class, you shouldn't have to switch instructors halfway through. So felt important to keep that one.
yeah. And I'm getting the sense that for you, the intensive cross pollination is super energizing, where for someone else it might be super draining. So
It is
while
super energizing. I often find that like something I'm like teaching in my technology and society class will like uh, bleed into my entrepreneurship class or my business class, because something we'll be talking about in there about the evolution of a particular technology. You can see like the business side of it, and then teach it in another class. And um, yeah, I mean, I think it's a really interesting cross pollination. And I started this year in particular, I started building. We finally have a block schedule for 2 days of the week at the school I teach at, and that gives you like 90 minutes with the kids once a week instead of 45-minute sections. And knowing that we had that 90 minutes meant that I could kind of think about like, okay, what kinds of experiments or simulations could we do in that time that I wasn't able to do before. So I've probably built like almost a dozen simulations this year that for entrepreneurship and for technology and society, so that we could learn how something worked in a more physical way, with kind of a hands-on immersion instead of just reading about it. And so that's just even like a slightly different set of constraints can completely change how you do something, right? And again, just being able to try it and do it immediately. There's just not many other kinds of careers where you get that chance to just, um, change everything immediately just to see what happens, right? It's a really good one.
is that one way that you help yourself find your way through all the change, uncertainty, and overwhelm that life seems to be ever more these days?
Well, I had to kind of develop a new strategy in about October of this year, watching how the election was progressing and realizing that the numbers were never going to change no matter what. Like nothing that happened could change the numbers for the election at all. Crimes, uh, great speeches, like nothing changed anything. Policies, nothing changed anything. And just realizing that there was not much that could be done. And yet I was spending a ton of time worrying and um, being stressed about this. And so I actually kind of came up with a new plan for myself in October. And one of the things was kind of sparked by my husband, who said, um, I wrote down my notes on this one because I wanted to get this right. He said, uh, reading about this and watching videos about this and worrying about this is not actually changing anything. But it is making you sad and depressed and stressed out. And knowing these things are happening is not actually changing anything in your life right now, which is true. So I decided to kind of box in the amount of time I spent looking at politics. I did a very extreme version of this in that I decided to stop looking altogether. And he was kind enough to agree to send me a weekly roll up of any articles, videos, or stories he thought I would actually be interested in, um, because it relates to something I teach or something I do or something that's important to me. And so I go through once a week and read his links. I just go directly to the stories. I read those stories, and that's it. I think individuals can also like time box this and say, okay, I'm only going to look. I would only look if you find that it's getting you down. I would only look on a morning when you have a really busy day. Because what happens on a really busy day is it pushes out the busyness of the day, pushes out the worry about what's going on, right? Now, I pair this with two other activities. So I should say I'm not just ignoring the news. I am purposely ignoring the things that keep me from being my best self in the world. And so the second thing I am doing is funding all of the groups that are actually fighting the things I want fought, the battles I want fought. I am not a lawyer. And so I cannot directly have an impact on most of the things that are happening and about to happen, but I can fund the lawyers. So specifically looking for organizations that fund lobbying, legal battles, et cetera, and I am funding those things, right? So that is how I can directly impact what's going on. It might be volunteering for those folks, but right now I have no time. So for me, it's funding those. And then the third thing is to look at the community around you and to say, who in this community of people around me is going to need the most help in the next 4 years? Who is going to be hurt the most? Who is going to be feeling the most direct impact every day from the things that are happening? Who can I help around me? Are there immigrants around me that I can help feel more comfortable in this country? Are there LGBTQ friends who I can help by being more supportive of, by inviting to more activities, by sending a text several times a week to see how they're doing? Are there BIPOC friends of mine that I can support better? Right? Are there low income people around me who need more help with watching kids, meals occasionally? Because maybe some of the where we've landed is because people don't feel enough support from their communities. Are there teachers around me that could use help and support because they are so poorly paid? Like, so poorly paid. I regularly watch my colleagues have flat tires and breakdowns on, a lot of them are driving an hour to get to a school because they can't afford to live in the community where they teach, right? Like, there are so many people around you you can help in your own community, right? So the deal I made with myself was I'm going to stop watching all of the news and reading all of the news because there's nothing I can do about most of it. I can fund the people who are actually doing something about it, and I can support more people in my community around me who I know are directly affected by the things that are going to happen. And that allows me to then spend my life energy doing the things that I can do. right? Like having the actual positive energy and the full energy to be supportive, to put all my time and effort at trying to solve problems I can solve, right? And unfortunately, I think so many of us have gotten sucked into this media cycle around the anger and the outrage. And the more sucked into that you are, the less of your attention is going to the things that might actually make a difference to the people around you. So you have to give it a little thought to how you want to spend your life energy and whether you really want to spend another decade of your life being outraged and worried. I just decided back in October, I can't do it anymore. I can't spend another decade of my life outraged and worried. I need to go back to being a person who could be more creative and positive force for change in the world, right? And that's a lot of that is how we demonstrate it. It's how we demonstrate it to the people around us.
So we can all do both in our personal life and at work what you've just been explaining what you're doing to bring our best selves into everything that we do. We can recognize what it is that's holding us back from doing that. We can identify what about that we can't change and take action to not focus on that stuff. For you, you're not watching that part of the news, and your husband's sending you updates so that you don't worry about missing things that you might really want to know about. Then you are giving your happy, joyful, make the world the place you want it to be energy to people who can take action in ways that you want to happen and that you know you can't do yourself. And then you're finding all sorts of creative ways to take action that you do have ability to, of funding all sorts of groups who are going in directions that you want, helping people in your community around the world you can help make the world more the way you want it to be for them. These are all things that we can do in the workplace too.
And it was really interesting because it was about 3 or 4 weeks after I made that change that I actually came up with the idea for this new company I started. And it's a spectacularly good idea for solving the teacher burnout problem. And I don't know that I would have had it if I hadn't made the space in my head to actually be able to think about other things, right? I think we all may be handicapping ourselves from our truly great ideas with this kind of attention and outrage cycle that we've all been stuck in for so long. And I don't want to discount that there are very real things that are going to be happening in the world that are not great. And there will be people who have to pay attention to what's going on because they may be directly affected by it. I mean, I am a woman who is most likely going to lose some of my rights because women are part of the target of this new administration, right? But I just can't do anything about that fact other than funding people who will immediately fight it. And so, like, I have this phrase I use to my friends, fund the lawyers, right? Just keep funding the lawyers. They are the ones who are going to they are the ones who have to pay attention, who have to immediately react and have to immediately, start legal action. And so they're the ones who need the funding, right? Me being angry at a congressman in my living room is not going to help anything. So I have to come up with positive ideas for change. And me actually, maybe it's just that us being able to be positive forces for good is the best way to fight this. And to be a good example to everybody around us, the kids that are in our sphere of influence, whether that's your own children, your children's friends, like even if you're not a teacher, there are people in your sphere of influence that need to see a positive force for good, to be able to have the energy to be a force of nature in this world, right? I can't have that kind of energy if I'm constantly angry and worried and upset. So I think we all have to find our own path to what gets us there. But if you can find a path that means you don't have to spend the next decade or 4 years not living your best life, then I think you should find that path. We all have to find that path. And that's maybe the best thing we can do.
We do all have to find our path, and that's maybe what life is all about, is how how can we inhabit that path more fully? How can we show up as more of ourselves more of the time in more of the places, and help everyone around us do the same?
Yeah,
The more that we're able to do that, the more we can turn these scary, uncertain, overwhelming, burnout inducing situations, whatever that is for us right now, into situations that inspire creativity and allow us to have the breakthrough ideas like you had for your new business. So that's that's really what our companies and our families and friends and the world need us to have, is to bring our unique perspectives into their lives so that we can enrich each other.
absolutely.
You have a blog which is stuffed full of many years of all sorts of interesting writing. Is that the best way for people to get in contact with you?
I haven't been writing so much lately. Unfortunately, I think, well, K-12 teaching is really quite, it will really take all of your time. I think on my best days as a full-time teacher, I maybe get 50% of the job done. It's crazy what teachers are expected to actually do every day. I think, oh, anyways, this is all just to say I don't write as much as I used to. I have probably like years of writing in my head that haven't been written down. But certainly when when I do have time occasionally, I will put something up there. So that blog is edgeoflearning.com. And there's certainly more than a decade of writing there already about some of the strategies that I've found helpful for managing time or productivity or having insights on how to work better and teaching. If you're a teacher, there's a lot of stuff there on teaching too. Um, I'd say, like, if you're trying to get a hold of me, probably start with LinkedIn because I do kind of look at that every day, and my email, of course. But you can find me on LinkedIn.
I'll have all those links in the show notes. And I'll note for the audience that if you're thinking, well, I'm a manager, I'm a program manager, I'm a developer, I'm not a teacher, all the stuff that Maria's writing up on her blog probably isn't going to be relevant. Remember everything we've talked about today about cross-pollination across disciplines and backgrounds and experiences? It's all 100% relevant. You may just need to look at it a little bit sideways. This has been a great conversation today, Maria. What would you like to leave our audience with?
You had a question which we never quite touched on exactly about how to make people feel safe and empowered and build a good company culture. And I think one of the things that I have insisted be a company culture for us and this new venture is to try to build a culture where everybody assumes best intent. This is hard to do with existing company cultures, but maybe easier to do in smaller parts of that company culture, or if you're building something new, to start with a culture of best intent. When you work in a remote environment, when you read a lot of emails, when you read a lot of Slack messages, things like that, you don't really get tone or expression of face or anything with those. And it can be really easy to read a message and think worst intent. Maybe we should all read messages and think best intent instead. And I'll just give you a quick example about that. A lot of managers will say this phrase, I need to talk to you about something. For many of us, that triggers an immediate response of fear because we've had some manager who would say, I need to speak to you about something. And then when they got to speak to you about something, they would ream you out about something, right? But I've had managers who say, I need to talk to you about something, and then told me about a fabulous new project that they wanted me to do or something like that. But there's something about this phrase that's just really awful. And so like just saying I need to talk to you about and filling in the blank. Because if it's something bad, you're going to be worried about it anyways. And if it's something good, you know not to worry about it anymore. Like just changing the phrase from the word something to what it actually is, I think can be just be more transparent with the people you work with, right? Don't leave them hanging about what it is you need to talk to them about. Just tell them what it is you need to talk about, though, and then say, I can't talk to you right now, but we'll talk about this later, right? The transparency is huge. I don't know why we leave people with hanging on this fear, but I think if you're running a team or an organization, starting to assume best intent instead of worst intent, if everybody can do that, and that could be kind of a mantra, and then being more transparent with what you need to talk to people about probably goes a long way to forming a better team.
100% for on both of those. Reminds me of feedback I had from a mentor many years ago. He told me, Michael, when you're giving feedback, don't say, I would like to appreciate you. I would like to thank you. I would like to, whatever it is. Just do it. Thank the person. Give the feedback. Appreciate them. And that
Yeah.
has stuck with me ever since. Thank you, Maria, for this fabulous conversation today. And thank you, audience, for joining us. What is holding you back from being your best self? How might cross-pollination from somewhere outside where you're spending all your time make that a little better? Maria and I would love to know. Thanks, and have a great day.